If you're a sports parent, you probably want your kid to stick with sports for a long time because they're physically, mentally, emotionally challenging in a good way that builds resistance or builds resilience and helps them grow up to be strong, resilient adults. Here in this video, I'm going to tell you 6 ways that young athletes get burned out that often leads to them quitting their sport well before they otherwise would have. Number 1, practices are too long and too frequent. This is something that you just have to figure out what team is right for your kid. Some of these teams, they have so many long tournaments in the summer and so many tedious practices throughout the winter and spring and whatever. A lot of practice time, like, look, I didn't love practice in a lot of ways because baseball, which was my sport, there's just a lot of rote, practice. Like every sport has that. And lots of players really love games and they don't love practice as much. So you have to figure out how much is too much. Now, when you're on teams that they like, it's not going to come down to reducing the amount of practices because your coach is going to be, the arbiter of this. But for you, it's going to be like, hey, we're going to play in the spring and the summer, but we're not going to play in the fall. Or we'll play in the fall and the winter, but we're going to take time off somewhere else. So you have to give them breaks. Toggle between sports, let them play different sports, and also just give them seasonal breaks. And that can help them not get burned out by just the overall quantity and duration of practices. Number 2, the second reason young athletes burn out is because there's just too much parental supervision. When I grew up, I played a ton of backyard baseball. I would meet friends at local fields. We would hit each other fly balls, pitch to each other. We got to do a lot of it on our own. Today, kids do almost none of it on their own. They're constantly supervised by parents, taking them to the batting cage, throwing, constantly coaching them. They're getting coached by everyone. They don't get to do it their own. Parents, give your kids some space. Organize within your neighborhood. Get a couple kids together, drive them to a local field, and then go sit in the car or go sit 300 yards away, or maybe you can keep an eye on them, but just read a book. Give them space to be kids and allow their sport to be play. There's work and then there's play. Sports too often feel like work because they're heavily supervised by adults, and they feel like play when kids can do it their own way, make up games, I used to imitate all my favorite major leaguers. I was Ken Griffey Jr. one day. I was Jay Buhner the next. I was Chipper Jones the next. I got to just do all these silly things that made me love what I was doing. You don't get to do that at formal practices. So parents, give your kids more opportunities for autonomy and for solo practice. Number 3, players get burned out because they get criticized too often. You have to be able to take constructive criticism as an athlete to be good. You have to learn to take coaching. Some players are not very coachable and they don't do very well because of it. But you have to have a balance of allies and critics in your kid's life. If their coach is really critical or their coach is just constantly giving feedback and not a lot of praise and optimism perhaps, then you as a parent need to take on the cheerleader role, the encourager role. Do they have someone in their life who's encouraging them and being there for them in an unconditional way no matter how well they play? If not, someone's got to fill that role, or else baseball or basketball is just this thing that they do where they just get constantly berated and criticized and never feel good enough. Who wants to feel like that? Think about the rec things that you do. If you play rec softball or tennis or you go jogging, imagine if every time you went out for a jog, someone was, you had someone behind you criticizing your pace, telling you to go faster, telling you that your running gait wasn't right, or constantly criticizing your forehand and your backhand playing tennis. Imagine if that was how you got to experience your getaways. Your kid's sport is their getaway. It's the thing they do that's not boring school. That's not their boring homework. It's not their chores at home. Their time playing basketball or football or soccer or swimming is their time to have fun and play. So just be certain that there's enough encouraging people in their corner. Sports are about failure, and they've got to have cheerleaders in their corner. Number 4, players burn out when they feel like they're constantly pushed to practice when they don't want to. This goes back to number 1, but look, as a parent, it's not your job to be berating them into practicing more. I know you spend a lot of money on their sport. I know they've invested a lot of time, that if they don't become, ultimately very good at their sport, then it feels like it's time wasted. But I'm here to tell you that it's not. The point of sports is just that they are doing a fun thing that challenges them in a new way, helps them meet new people, interact, learn to be coachable, learn to be a good teammate. Those are the things that they'll ultimately take from sports. And most kids won't become D1 athletes. And even if they do, being a D1 athlete does not change your life. There are lots of miserable D1 athletes, and there are lots of people who played D1 sports who are miserable adults. So ultimately, let them drive the car. If they don't want to practice one night, don't let them practice, but don't be constantly nagging your kid because if they don't do it, they won't meet their goals. Allow them to fail. Allow them to fail for lack of effort too. That's part of being an athlete. Number 5, and this is a big one, kids burn out from sports when they can feel that it's all about achievement and not about their feelings and not about fun. Parents, be really careful about the signals you're sending. Do you become more distant or disappointed in your kid when they don't play well? If your kid doesn't become a varsity starter, do you act differently towards them if they get cut from their team or if they only make the B tier travel team in your area? Do you shun them in the car ride home if they go 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts or miss a bunch of easy layups in a basketball game? Lots of parents are telegraphing that you're only valuable if you achieve a lot. I don't love you as much when you don't play as well. I won't love you as much if you don't become a college athlete. That is a really heartbreaking, terrible thing that's happening in sports right now, where parents are making sports about achievement and making their love feel based on that achievement. You may be doing this in subtle ways, even with good intentions, so be really careful and look in the mirror about the message you're sending to your kid. Do you love them unconditionally? Can they absolutely stink at soccer and you still love them just as much? Or are you sending some signals that make it seem like their performance on the field has something to do with who they are and their value as a person? Be really careful and have a good conversation with your partner or whoever who can say, you know what, I think we need to do things a little bit different. But if you make it all about achievement, your kid's gonna feel it, they probably already do, and it's gonna lead them to pick something else and get away from your involvement in their recreational activities long term. And the last reason that players end up leaving their sport or getting burned out is that they have injuries or pain that nags them. This is hard. I had elbow pain. I had 2 elbow surgeries. I pitched through a lot of pain in my career, and I've watched a lot of young athletes who've had to battle ankle injuries, knee injuries, back injuries, shoulder injuries, where after a couple of years of it, they're like, you know what? I love volleyball, but like, I'm just tired of my shoulder hurting. I'm just gonna do swimming and I'm gonna do cross country because like my body handles that better. I continued to pitch through tremendous elbow and shoulder pain. Basically my whole high school and beyond career, I was in pain more times than I was not. And I did that because I just had such an intense love affair with baseball that I was okay. The balance was still there. It was still fun and purposeful, even though I was in constant pain. But if your kid's really battling injuries, say they're the soccer kid who just like constantly is tweaking something, constantly rolling an ankle, really listen to them. Ask them how they're feeling about it. Take more time off, you know, like have a longer off season, whatever it is. But just keep it in mind when you're constantly beaten down by something, whether it's emotionally, which is a lot of the stuff I covered in this video, or physically, ultimately you just want to get away from it. And that's how I felt at the very end of my career. My shoulder ended my career and it was really tough, but I finally, for the first time in my entire life, I just did not want to throw a baseball. The thing that I loved more than anything else, finally it was so painful and every day that I just didn't want to do it. And I walked away. And now I'm lucky that 8 years later, I've come back to slow pitch recreational softball, very low level. I just love being out there running and playing like I was a kid again. I don't have anything to achieve. I just like doing the thing and being around other people and competing a little bit. I don't really care if we win or lose. I get to experience sports now like I did when I was 8, and I'm so thankful for that. So parents, I really hope you can build a positive, healthy, fun experience that you get to enjoy with your kid, that you get to sit there and watch your kid run around and think, I'm just so happy that they're happy. And that's why I made this video. So share with another parent, be sure to subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you here in the next video.